Welcome to the Startup Grind.
What are you seeing with what it was when you got here, all the way through the .com to what it is today? What is your perception of the market right now, and what is your take on it?
Yeah, so I'll start with somebody asked me that is, what the hell do I know? I've just been around a long time. But there are some really interesting things for entrepreneurs you should appreciate, because it's happened so slowly you don't realize it. When I came out here, this was an information sparse area for an entrepreneur. If you had a coffee with someone who actually knew something once a week or once a month, that was a lot of data, right? And so you kind of sucked up every piece of data you could find on how to build and start companies, because it was rare. I mean, there was no web, there no net, no anything. Nowadays, entrepreneurs have I think a much worse problem, if you could believe it. It's too much information, because if you want an opinion about any possible direction you could take, it's on the web, or somebody's written a book from it, or you can read your favorite blog. And all that information is, unless you have a profound belief or some guidance for yourself, that could jerk you around in 15 different directions and just melt you down. And so one of the things I teach my students is, eventually you need to develop your own moral compass. And not just moral compass, your own entrepreneurship compass. It's great to buy my book, or Eric Ries's, or Osterwalder's, or there's now at least a body of knowledge that you can start with. But I got to tell you, that's not where you want to end up. Nothing makes me happier than someone saying, I read your book, but let me tell you how we're really going to do it. Great, because now at least you have your own compass. I'm happy that you start with mine. So that's kind of the one major difference. The other is, Silicon Valley has weathered almost every major crisis. Everybody said, well, we're out of innovation, we're going to shut down. There was the defense wave, and then there was the semiconductor wave, and then there was the PC wave, and then the Web 1.0 wave, and every time people go, well, there's no more need for X. People forget is what we really do from San Francisco to San Jose now is we no longer make products here. What we do, that's not what we really do now. We're the center of innovation and entrepreneurship for not only the United States, but for the world. And that's a big idea. What we do here is we encourage risk and we accept failure. And I have to tell you, when I have foreign visitors come into Stanford and go, how would you explain Silicon Valley? I get it down to a sentence. I go, you know what we call a failed entrepreneur in Silicon Valley? I said, there's a special word for it. And they all kind of guess. And blah, blah, blah. I said, well, the special word for a failed entrepreneur here, it's experienced. And they look at you, and it's like they can't compute. I go, no. A failed entrepreneur doesn't have to change their name. They haven't shamed their family or their community or anywhere else. In fact, I used to first step one, blame it on someone else, But if you actually have what I call an honest failure, you go, let me tell you the 50 ways I screwed this up. This is my fault. Blah blah blah. The next time you have coffee with a friend in the Valley, they don't ask you did you have to pay the money back? They ask you, so what's your next startup? Nowhere else in the world is that said. We take for granted that we're living in an innovation environment and an entrepreneurship culture where failure and the cycles of failure and success are celebrated. And the other part about our culture is, no one looks at somebody who just made 20 million bucks and said, goddamn capitalists, we hate them. Someone goes, well, yeah, I'm smarter than them, it's just my time hasn't come, right? And in fact, in a room like this, I kind of remind people that, in this room, there's at least a couple of you who are going to be worth 100 million bucks in the next couple of years. Yeah, all right. And I also remind you, you should look around. For me. You should look around, is that most of you would have been better off working at Walmart. And that's not the funny part. Because the funny part is the true entrepreneurs in the room were feeling sorry for the poor son of a bitches in the rest of the room. So if you were the ones who were thinking, well, that's going to be me, then you got the right DNA. So this culture is kind of unique. And that said, what really has happened in the last maybe 5 or 10 years is the democratization of entrepreneurship. It used to be that a startup required millions of dollars. And the only place to get it was Sand Hill Road, or when I started in Boston, which was, believe it or not, competing with Silicon Valley for who was the entrepreneurship center. We used waterfall engineering, so the time to market was measured in years. You know, you needed to buy expensive computers and expensive software. Computing wasn't a utility. Thank you, Amazon. You know, we take for granted all this stuff. But now, in fact, especially for web and mobile and cloud apps, you can get a minimum viable product out in weeks, if not months. You know, it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars to get first customers, not millions. And you know,
or less, right? Or free.
Or free. Or living in your car. Now, I wanted to know if he was really creative, he would be siphoning gas. So that, you know, okay, you know, that's the car thing. But tell me, like, you haven't bought gas in another month. But if you really think about it now, that's really allowed entrepreneurship to sprout in areas that we never thought possible. I mean, a one Dave McClure, a 1-500 house could start an entrepreneurial cluster by just funding, you know, 200 startups, where, you know, that amount of cash might have just, you know, funded lunch money for, you know, a traditional hardware company. So while the Valley is getting, you know, more and more denser and is kind of the place to be, there are entrepreneurship clusters occurring in different places in the country and different places in the world. I've been to Chile, I've been to Finland, I've been to Moscow, and in Europe, and seen these, and it's really kind of amazing. And the web has, and these kinds of conversations are now available instantly anywhere. So it's not like we're hoarding, you know, extreme knowledge. And so I forgot your question, but I think I answered it.
That's great. That's great.
Getting too old.